8:15 a.m., August 6, 1945. For the residents of Hiroshima, the morning began like any other. Commuters were rushing to work, children were settling into school, and the humid Japanese summer air was just starting to rise. But 30,000 feet above their heads, the Enola Gay had just opened its bay door. A single object, 10 feet long, weighing 9,700 pounds, began to fall. It fell for exactly 43 seconds. Then, at 1,900 feet above the ground, the detonator clicked. In a fraction of a microsecond, a small piece of uranium fired into a larger one, and the fabric of reality was torn apart. The air didn't just get hot. It turned into plasma. A fireball erupted with a core temperature of millions of degrees, hotter than the surface of the sun. The shockwave that followed moved faster than the speed of sound, flattening concrete, vaporizing steel, and erasing human beings from existence before their brains could even process the flash of light. It was the closest thing to hell humanity had ever manufactured. But amidst this landscape of total, absolute annihilation, there was a glitch in the destruction, a statistical anomaly that physics simply cannot explain. Less than 1 mile from ground zero, well within the radius of total vaporization, a small 2-story house remained standing. It wasn't a bunker. It wasn't reinforced concrete. It was a wooden rectory next to the Church of Our Lady of the Assumption. The church next door was obliterated. The buildings across the street were reduced to dust. But the rectory stood, and inside that house, something even stranger happened. There were 8 men inside, Jesuit missionaries from Germany. By all laws of science, the overpressure from the blast should have crushed their internal organs instantly. The heat wave should have incinerated them where they sat. But it didn't. One of them, Father Hubert Schiffer, was 30 years old. He had just finished Mass and was sitting down to slice a grapefruit for breakfast. He later recalled a blinding flash, a sensation of being lifted by an invisible giant and being hurled through the air like a dry leaf in a hurricane. The house shook violently, windows shattered, and debris flew, but the structure held. When Father Schiffer opened his eyes, he was bruised and cut by flying glass, but he was alive. He looked around. His 7 companions were also alive. They stumbled out of the house into a world that had ceased to exist. Hiroshima was gone. In its place was a sea of fire and silence. Now, surviving the blast is one thing. Surviving what came next is entirely another. In the days following the explosion, American scientists and doctors arrived to survey the damage. They knew about the invisible killer, gamma radiation. They calculated the dosage at that distance from the epicenter, and the conclusion was grim. They told the priests, quite bluntly, that their bodies were walking corpses. Their cells had been bathed in lethal radiation. They predicted hair loss, internal bleeding, organ failure, and death within weeks. But the weeks turned into months. The months turned into years. The priests didn't die. They didn't even get sick. Father Schiffer lived another 33 years. He was poked, prodded, and examined by over 200 doctors and scientists who were desperate to find a genetic mutation or a biological shield. They found nothing. When the experts ran out of theories, they finally asked the priests, "How? How is this possible?" The Jesuits didn't offer a formula or a blueprint. They pointed to a string of beads. Father Schiffer said, "We believe that we survived because we were living the message of Fatima. We lived and prayed the Rosary daily in that home. To them, the laws of nuclear physics had been suspended by a higher law. They believed they were inside a force field generated not by technology, but by a repetitive, meditative prayer. And just when you think this is a singular freak event, history repeats itself 3 days later. August 9th. Nagasaki. The second atomic bomb, Fat Man, is dropped. This time, the target isn't just a city. It's the spiritual heart of Catholicism in Japan. The bomb detonates almost directly above the Urakami Cathedral, the largest church in East Asia. It is wiped off the face of the earth. Thousands of parishioners perish instantly. But nearby, on the slope of a mountain, stands a Franciscan friary called the Garden of the Immaculate. It was built by Saint Maximilian Kolbe, a man who would later die in Auschwitz. When Kolbe built the friary years earlier, Everyone told him he was making a mistake. He built it on the wrong side of the mountain, facing away from the city. But that mistake became their salvation. The mountain ridge shielded the friary from the direct thermal wave. While the cathedral below was vaporized, the friars on the mountain, who also maintained a strict devotion to the daily rosary, survived. The radiation cloud drifted over them, but like the Jesuits in Hiroshima, they suffered no lethal effects. 2 cities, 2 bombs, 2 groups of men devoted to the same specific prayer. 2 impossible survivals. To the skeptical mind, this is a series of lucky coincidences. Maybe the angle of the walls in Hiroshima was just right. Maybe the wind in Nagasaki blew the fallout away. But to believers, this isn't luck. It's evidence of a spiritual weapon. And that is exactly how the Catholic Church views the Rosary. It's not just a meditation tool. It's described as a sword. To understand why, we have to go back way before the atomic age to 1571. The Mediterranean Sea. The entire fate of Christian Europe hung in the balance. The Ottoman Empire had assembled a massive naval fleet, the largest the world had ever seen, intent on conquering Rome. The Pope, Pius V, knew he couldn't win a military victory. His forces were outnumbered, outgunned, and outmaneuvered. So he didn't just send ships, he sent a request. He ordered the churches of Europe to stay open around the clock. He asked every citizen to pray the rosary for victory. On the ships of the Holy League, every soldier was handed a rosary. The 2 fleets collided in the Gulf of Lepanto. The wind was blowing strongly against the Christian ships, driving the Ottoman vessels forward like a battering ram. It looked like a slaughter was inevitable. Then, at the precise moment the battle lines engaged, the wind stopped. It shifted 180 degrees. The sails of the Holy League filled, and the Ottoman fleet was thrown into chaos. The victory was total. Back in Rome, hundreds of miles away, Pope Pius V suddenly stood up from a meeting, walked to a window, and wept, declaring that victory had been won at that exact moment. They called it Our Lady of Victory. It established the precedent that this string of beads could alter the geopolitics of the world. Fast forward again, the 20th century. We see this pattern re-emerge, but this time without swords or ships. In the Philippines, 1986. The dictator Ferdinand Marcos has the country in a chokehold. The military is ordered to crush a massive civilian uprising. Tanks roll down the Epifanio de los Santos Avenue. This is a Tiananmen Square moment waiting to happen. But as the tanks approach the crowd, the hatch commanders look through their periscopes and see something they can't process. They don't see Molotov cocktails. They don't see rifles. They see nuns. Hundreds of nuns kneeling on the asphalt, holding rosaries up against the armor of the tanks, praying. The soldiers have orders to fire. They have the power to flatten the crowd. But they don't. The psychological dissonance of facing that specific symbol of faith breaks the chain of command. Soldiers climb out of their tanks. They join the crowd. The regime collapses without a civil war. They called it the Rosary Revolution. Similar scenes played out in Brazil in 1964 and Austria in 1955. Time and again, when this prayer is deployed on a mass scale, historical trajectories seem to bend. So, where does that leave us? We have the data points. We have the medical records of the Hiroshima priests, which shouldn't exist. We have the historical accounts of winds shifting and armies halting. A skeptic can break these down individually. Structural integrity, weather patterns, crowd psychology, and those are valid arguments. But the sheer volume of these coincidences clustered around this one specific object forces us to ask a difficult question. Is there a mechanism at play here that we are too materialistic to see? Father Schiffer was convinced until his dying day that there was no physics equation that could explain why he didn't vaporize that morning in 1945. He believed he was protected by a shield woven from words. Whether you believe in miracles or you believe in chance, the story of the Hiroshima 8 remains one of the most fascinating unsolved mysteries of the atomic age. It challenges us to consider that in the split second between life and death, there may be forces more powerful than uranium. Forces that don't split atoms, but hold them together.